Sweden had a problem. Too many immigrants, not enough integration. Once a peaceful paradise, Sweden now ranks second in the world for bombings in countries not at war. So what did Sweden do? They got tough. Really tough. The burning question now is, will their hardline approach be a solution for Sweden and also a blueprint for the rest of Europe? The Scandinavian nation of just 10.6 million people is facing a national crisis due to its failure to integrate record numbers of immigrants. Sweden's reputation has fallen from a welfare state model to a warning example. Foreign-born citizens now account for 20% of the population, and officials are perplexed by rising crime, economic threats, and deteriorating education systems. So how did Sweden, once known for its open and welcoming immigration policies, transform into a country with some of the strictest immigration measures in Europe? After staying out of World War II, Sweden evolved into a high-performing, export-oriented economy, built on a stable parliamentary democracy and social consensus. The country boasted top-notch healthcare and education, enjoyed social and gender equality, had low crime rates, and minimal ethnic conflict. Present-day Sweden is now known for having the highest rate of gang-related killings in Europe. Shockingly, the average age of serious offenders is very low, with kids in their early teens being arrested for murder. Many suburbs are now labeled as especially vulnerable areas, meaning it's almost impossible for the police to work there. These areas, often called no-go zones, are controlled by local gangs, and first responders need flak jackets and police escorts to enter. Back in 2017, President Donald Trump even commented on the problems in Sweden due to open doors. He said,
"You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden! Who would believe this? Sweden!"
You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden! Who would believe this? And Sweden's story is one that's really important at the moment with the rise of the right-wing Sweden Democrats, because they are capitalizing on concerns over integration, crime, and economic pressures. Sweden's right-wing Democrats Party's support surged to 20.6% in the latest election, making it the second largest in parliament and pushing the government towards restrictive policies like border checks and deportation centers. And it's a movement we are seeing all over Europe at the moment. With the rise of the right wing, Sweden Democrats have dramatically changed the country's political landscape, capitalizing on growing concerns over integration, crime rates, and economic pressures. Founded in 1988 as a fringe party uniting various far-right elements, the Sweden Democrats have undergone a remarkable rebranding under the leadership of Jimmie Åkesson since 2005, by shifting their image away from their extremist roots and adopting a more populist stance, particularly on the issue of immigration. The party has struck a chord with an increasing number of Swedish voters. The surge in support for the Sweden Democrats can be directly attributed to the mounting anxiety surrounding the influx of immigrants and the challenges of integration. A lot of Swedes feel that the flood of immigrants has wrecked their country. They say Sweden isn't safe anymore, pointing to skyrocketing crime rates, gang violence, and even bombings. Many think the welfare state is falling apart because it's being pushed to its limits. Schools can't keep up with the growing number of students, hospitals are overcrowded, and there's not enough housing. They believe the country is splitting apart, with different cultures clashing and the economy under strain. For many, the dream of a safe, prosperous Sweden is gone, replaced by chaos and uncertainty. As Johan Martinsson, a political scientist from the University of Gothenburg, explains, the party's success is tied to Sweden's significant number of asylum seekers and rapidly changing demographics in terms of ethnicity and the share of foreign-born citizens. This sentiment has resonated strongly with many workers concerned about job security and competition from low-wage labor, boosting the Sweden Democrats to unprecedented heights in the political arena. In the latest elections, the Sweden Democrats achieved a staggering 20.5% of the vote, solidifying their position as the second strongest party in the country. This marked their best ever electoral performance, surpassing even more mainstream right-wing parties. The party's anti-immigration stance, once considered radical, has now become increasingly mainstream, influencing the policies of the right-wing bloc and contributing to their narrow victory over the center-left coalition. The Sweden Democrats have not shied away from controversial tactics to promote their message. Public displays against immigration, such as putting up English-language posters in Stockholm and distributing leaflets on the Mediterranean island of Lesbos to discourage refugees from coming to Sweden, have been part of their political strategy. These actions have further polarized the debate surrounding immigration and have forced other parties to confront the issue head-on. The rise of the Sweden Democrats is not an isolated phenomenon, but rather part of a broader trend of rising populism and nationalism across Europe. Far-right parties have gained substantial portions of the vote in many countries, reflecting a growing disillusionment with traditional political establishments and a desire for more stringent immigration policies. Sweden, once a bastion of openness and tolerance, has not been immune to these forces, and the Sweden Democrats have skillfully tapped into the zeitgeist of the times. As the political landscape in Sweden continues to shift, the question remains, how will the country navigate the balance between maintaining its humanitarian values and addressing the very real challenges posed by immigration? The Sweden Democrats' influence on policy is already being felt, with plans for special reception centers for asylum seekers, increased detention places, and return centers for those whose applications are rejected. In 2024, Sweden announced a series of stringent changes to its migration policy. Reception centers for asylum seekers are being established to centralize their processing and accommodation, a move intended to control where asylum seekers live and limit their freedom of movement. These centers are part of a broader strategy to manage migration more effectively. Asylum seekers will no longer be allowed to settle wherever they wish. These changes have sparked significant controversy. Critics argue that Sweden's new policies are harsh and inhumane. Public opinion is deeply divided, with some praising the government for taking a strong stance, while others fear the erosion of Sweden's humanitarian values. One of the most contentious aspects of Sweden's new migration policy is the establishment of return centers. These facilities are designated for asylum seekers whose applications have been rejected, facilitating their return to their home countries. The government has allocated substantial funds to these centers, reflecting a firm stance on immigration. From the once welcoming nation that opened its arms to asylum seekers, Sweden has now embarked on a dramatic course correction. Alongside these centers, Sweden has introduced stricter asylum laws to reduce the influx of migrants. These measures include rigorous checks to prevent abuse of the asylum system and a crackdown on illegal immigration. Despite the challenges, Sweden's new migration policies are showing results. The number of asylum seekers has decreased significantly, and the government expects this trend to continue. By centralizing the asylum process and focusing on efficient returns, Sweden aims to create a sustainable and fair migration system. The story of Sweden's immigration policies is far from over. From the once welcoming nation that opened its arms to asylum seekers, Sweden has now gone on a dramatic course correction. The country's decision to introduce stringent identity checks on all incoming traffic from Denmark in January 2016 marked a significant departure from its historically generous refugee policies. This move, aimed at reducing the influx of migrants and refugees, came on the heels of an unprecedented surge in asylum applications in 2015, which saw Sweden receive a staggering 160,000 asylum seekers, nearly double the previous record of 84,000 set in 1992. The sheer volume of arrivals stretched Sweden's resources to the breaking point, with local councils across the country struggling to accommodate the growing numbers of refugees. Gymnasiums, churches, and even tent camps were pressed into service as makeshift shelters, while the costs associated with the crisis mounted. Faced with this unsustainable situation and an increasingly skeptical public, the Swedish government announced a series of policy changes in autumn 2015. These measures included shorter processing times for asylum requests, a tougher stance on rejected applicants, and plans to establish dedicated reception centers for asylum seekers. The government also allocated substantial funds, some 13.8 billion SEK, around $1.5 billion, to various aspects of migration policy in its 2024 budget bill, with a particular emphasis on increasing detention capacity and facilitating the return of failed asylum seekers to their countries of origin. The impact of this policy overhaul has been extreme, both for Sweden and for the broader European context. By adapting its asylum laws to minimum EU standards and phasing out its more generous provisions, Sweden has signaled a clear intention to bring its policies in line with those of its neighbors, a move that has not gone unnoticed in other member states grappling with similar challenges. At the same time, the country's experience serves as a cautionary tale about the limits of even the most welcoming and well-intentioned immigration policies in the face of overwhelming numbers and limited resources. As Sweden navigates this new reality, the socio-economic and cultural implications of its policy shift are coming into sharper focus. But recent years have seen a notable shift in public discourse. There are growing concerns about social cohesion and rising inequalities, with some Swedes expressing unease about the pace and scale of demographic change. As one researcher noted, while few from the majority population feel marginalized, there are signs of changing attitudes, with increasing feelings that the immigrant population is weakening Swedish values and the Swedish way of life. The nation serves as a microcosm for the broader European struggle with immigration. The Swedish model, once heralded as a shining example of progressive policy, now finds itself at a crossroads. Can this Scandinavian nation chart a course that upholds its commitment to human rights while addressing the very real economic and social pressures that come with large-scale migration? It's a question that resonates far beyond Sweden's borders as countries across the continent grapple with similar challenges. Some may look to Sweden's recent policy shifts as a blueprint for action, while others fear that such measures risk eroding the very values that define European society. As we think of Sweden's path forward, it's clear that the implications of this ongoing balancing act will be felt for generations to come. To dive deeper into how more European nations are tackling the immigration crisis, feel free to subscribe to our channel. We will try to upload every day. Have a nice day until the next time.